Hi everyone, we wanted to do a little follow-up video to our Tuesday night podcast earlier this week. There were so many comments and questions. We're so grateful for all of them. Lots going on in the economy right now, and we thought we'd pull some comments that you had earlier this week, and we're going to address them right now.
Yeah, I think that we ruffled some feathers too, because, coming from a real estate company, you would not think that we would tell you that buying a home may not be an investment. And, we all are brought up with, the thought that the American dream is to own a home. And there are quite a few of financial advisors that will tell you that it's one of the biggest mistakes we can make if we overspend, especially when we buy properties that are, not updated and need a lot of work. It puts us in a financial burden, and a lot of times these financial burdens and buying houses that are too big for us make it hard for us to prepare for retirement. And I know for a lot of you young people that may be listening right now, you may say, hey, I'm not ready to retire, but I can tell you it happens quicker than you might think. And a lot of times, you get into a house and you spend all of your money, and it prevents you from enjoying life also, going away, going on vacations, if those things are important to you, and just, not being under stress all the time. So we spoke about that a little bit, and we did. Melissa, we had a lot of questions.
We did. And what we talked about in our podcast, if you bought a home in the past 2 years, it may be actually worth a lot less than what you purchased it for.
And that kind of goes along with saying that it's not a good investment. So a lot of people bought an overpriced house. And the thoughts from the viewers was that, because they bought in the time when interest rates were very low, that's great to have a low interest rate, but most people sell within 7 to 9 years. And I think the issue with buying at the top of any market, we saw it in 2006, is that, you may not be able to sell that house for what you paid for it, not counting the fact that when you go to sell, you're going to have other fees like real estate commission should you use a brokerage, and transfer fees, things like that, repairs especially. And I think that one of the things that a lot of the buyers didn't consider when they were paying $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 more for the house than what it was actually worth, above appraised value, bringing their cash to the table. I think a lot of people didn't realize that by not asking the seller to fix anything, this was probably the only time in my 30 plus years so far in serving the housing market in one way or another. This is probably the first time that I watched sellers not needing to fix anything, right? So a lot of people just lived in their house for 7, 8, 10 years, didn't fix anything. And these buyers, they bought that problem, and now they're sinking a lot more money into the house, certainly more than what the home is worth in a lot of circumstances.
By no means what we're saying is not purchase a house. It's really just take the time, be careful, do your due diligence, make sure that you are getting your inspections, that you know exactly what you're getting into. And I will say that you buyers out there are getting smarter. For example, we had Paris Tonette that made a comment that in Pittsburgh, a home sold in 2014 for $182K, now listed at $269. She offered at $259 after inspection. They didn't want to fix the corroded sewer line or flue liner. She walked away, and now they're fixing it all. So just right there, we can see that, the buyers are getting smarter.
All right, so let's dive into some of these questions that we did not have time to answer. Certainly, you can watch the Tuesday night podcast in its entirety. It was a long one. It was about an hour and a half. So if you want to learn more about real estate and you're on a long drive or on that elliptical, go ahead and check it out and listen to it, and you can comment and let us know what you think. But let's dive in and we'll answer some questions now.
Recently in the news, the Fed had their meeting. Jay Powell announced that the Fed was raising their rate a 1/4 point. We had a handful of people making comments and wanted to know your opinion, Todd. We had Sage Stevens, can't wait to hear your thoughts on Jerome's effect on the market. Also, Robot asked you, Todd, as well, what do you think of Jay Powell's decision?
So I just watched another interview with Powell well after he had announced the 1/4 point hike. And the new jobs market report had just come out after their announcement. And, the interview was asking Jay Powell if he knew the information that the job market would be so strong, would that have changed the Fed's perspective and actually made the rate hikes higher? And Jay Powell, had indicated that he thought that the job market's remaining strong or showing so many jobs available, so many companies hiring, that he thought that that would even extend the need for, more tightening and, as far as the, fiscal tightening of the budget, and also longer and even higher rate hikes. And I think, so the question is, and there's a huge disconnect. Where does the Fed get their data? This jobs report. I mean, what are these jobs? How much do they pay? Can people live on them? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the whole thing right now is about as much of a disaster as it can be. And though the Fed is trying to feed us shovel this great news that, hey, we're able to soft land this economy, the problem is that inflation is still a runaway train. We're not really seeing major disinflation. And I mean, there's a word for you, right? Or slowing of inflation rates. But, the more important issue is that we're not seeing any kind of deflation. And until these jobs, and he said it himself, that the, salaries are going down. He basically said that pay is going down slightly, and yet inflation is still too high and way above the 2%. And so what does this mean? Does it mean that jobs are available, but they're worth less money? And so how will people afford the high prices? So unless we see deflation or we see any kind of major wage growth, which is doubtful right now with the cost of money, I think that this is going to get a lot worse. And to just kind of summarize, what do I think of the Fed's decision to raise rates just a quarter of a point? I don't think that this is any indication of easing. I don't think it's any indication of pivoting. I think we have a very long way to go. And I think that we are going to eventually crash land this economy. And, the biggest thing is, in this interview that was after the Fed announcement of a quarter point, the Fed had said that they expected that it would take a long period of time in order to get to this 2% target. They also asked him in this interview that I just listened to, why not 3%? 3% annual, inflation rate is decent. And he said that was just the percentage that they wanted to be at, that they were looking at, the world overall as a target rate, and that they would not pivot from the 2%. And he was pretty strong about that.
A lot of you are feeling this in different parts of the country, and we do like it when you check in and kind of give us updates of what's going on. There are so many investors buying up property here in Pittsburgh. I've been watching my market like a hawk, and some houses I toured are now sold and marketed for rent.
Melissa, I don't know. I mean, Paris, I'm not sure what's happening in Pittsburgh, but I know investors have been buying up property all over the country with the affordability issue and people now not being able to qualify for a mortgage because of whatever reason, debt to income ratios, the price of the house now, they can't afford the mortgage payment. And then the repairs, as we just kind of briefly spoke about. I think in the new construction, we're going to see this a lot. I think we're going to see builders, stuck with this new inventory. We're already hearing where they're bundling it and selling it to investors, where investors are going to turn them into rentals. So I think the rental market, though Jay Powell has mentioned, wanting to bring down rents as far as, housing inflation, I think it's going to take some time, but I do think that we're going to see a lot more rentals, single family rentals hit the market.
Todd, speaking of new construction, we had Rich who made a comment, and he said, I'm anxious about waiting because if rates come down to 5%, builders might get rid of some of these huge incentives. Some of the builders are doing $30,000 credit towards closing costs and rate buy downs. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, again, a lot's going to depend on what happens in the economy, the jobs market over the next quarter. But I think these new home construction communities are in big trouble. And I think that, if rates drop down to 5%, the builders will want to buy them down to 4%. So I don't know that it's going to change their position. I think they would like that. They would certainly like rates to drop to 5% because then they could sell the house for more money. But as we spoke of in the podcast, basically what happens is these builders don't want to drop their prices because it really upsets the people that purchased in that same community, that same subdivision not that long ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And, so it really makes people disgruntled, very upset. when they see that somebody could buy a house for $100,000 less than they did. So what these builders try to do is throw in these incentives, and so that it's not advertised or not marketed on a sign where it may say from the mid sevens. They don't want to put on the sign from the mid sixes, especially when they're keeping the same size house. And like I said, they just sold them to plenty of people a year ago.
We had a lot of people comment about your experience with, their agent, especially going through the buying process. We had Oso who had a question for us. Who will buyers go after if they feel cheated when their advisor has now quit the business?
Certainly we've always spoke about how important it is to have the right representation, whether you're buying or selling. And, unfortunately, there are a lot of agents that are exiting. We have a massive exodus of licensees. You speak to them, Melissa, that, they're either putting their license in referral or they've just decided that they're going to retire. Certainly it's a big difference out there right now, because if they don't have a big book of business or they don't have a lot of experience, they don't have a lot of, repeat activity, buyers, especially agents, the lower lying fruit for a real estate agent is be a buyer's agent, because very little marketing is involved, very little out of pocket money. Really, when you list a house, you should be doing things like brochures and videos and marketing and advertising, boosting, social media boosts and stuff. So a buyer's agent really doesn't have to do so much of that. It's not required. The buyers, unfortunately, now most of them find what they want to see on some of the big sites, Trulia, Zillow, homes.com, things like that, realtor.com. But I do know that in multiple conversations with my attorney that the real estate commissions are full of complaints right now with buyers that said that they felt that their buyer's agent didn't represent them well. Guys, I'm going to tell you, you have to make your own decisions. The only one signing the, contract to sale is you as a buyer. The only one that's going to the settlement table with your checkbook is you. Now, I'm not saying that you weren't misguided. Some of you didn't get some, bad information. Because certainly it's possible. But I think the level of excitement of buyers, exuberance, and the fear of missing out, the FOMO that we saw, especially amongst our first-time buyers who had never experienced a downturn, I think this is going to teach a very valuable lesson. And, I hope not, but I think that it will. Time will tell. Guys, if anything, thank you so much for watching this video and all of our videos. And if anything, we're trying to just give you good education as to why you should slow down and think about, even if it means that you lost the house that you were excited about, another house will come on the market that will be better than, what you lost. And you need to use the element of time to be on your side. And when people are making buying decisions that are going to affect them for decades, put them in mortgage payments that is a 30-year mortgage, deplete all of their bank account, and put them in a position where, they can't afford to buy furniture now for the house, and, really stress them out in the event that something should happen in their life. These are not the types of decisions that we make walking through a house in 30 minutes and you're saying, I want it. So I think, guys, if you're listening and you can slow down just a little bit, you're going to find a home that's perfect for you, and it just may be at a better price.
So with that being said, Todd, should people even be buying right now?
If I had a nickel for every time I was asked that question, I wouldn't need to sell houses anymore. I think, guys, that you can find deals in any market. But I think that we do need to get back to the basics. And we have to make sure that if we are in the market right now to buy, I always tell my buyers, I love it when you have 6 months of emergency cash in the bank, even after your down payment, especially after your down payment, to take care of, anything that should occur or any kind of life event that could, throw a financial curveball in your direction. But I would say that, I do think that we are going to see home prices drop. The question is, can you get that house now for a lesser price? And, if you found out that prices dropped, would you still be okay with it? And they're the biggest questions that you have to ask yourself. So definitely do not forego your home inspection. I would not advise that. In fact, if anybody tells you to do that, run in the other direction and, make sure that you're taking your time. There are ways with a good agent that, you can get that home under contract with some contingencies that could give you a few ways out should your excitement wear off or you realize that you made a mistake. What I will tell you is that I always tell my buyers to put down the least amount of earnest money deposit that you're comfortable with doing. Sometimes I like to say, at least with my clients, no more than 1% of an earnest money deposit, because what happens is if you get into a contract and you decide that you are going to walk away, by putting down those larger deposits can really be, financially burdensome and prevent you from buying something else. All right, guys, that's a wrap. If you like this video, you can let Melissa and I know that you did by smashing that thumbs up.
Keep those comments and questions. We love reading them. We love responding to them.
And if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button and don't forget the alert bell. That will assure that you'll know every time we upload content just like this. And guys, please don't keep this all to yourself. Share it with your friends. The share button is below. See you next time.
See you next time.
Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.